In this lecture, I want to quickly talk about how exactly it works to pass arguments into functions. And also, this goes back to the video that we had about primitives versus objects, which remember we also call primitive types and reference types. So this kind of review to the lecture but applied to functions because it is very much important that we really understand how primitives and objects work in the context of functions. Back to VS Code. Now let's draw up a quick and simple example here. Let's write here const. I'm giving here flight that is equal, giving the flight name as LH234. This is the flight number. And then I want to give the passenger details. So for that I'm creating an object. I'm giving the name Freya. Then creating object name Freya Sharma. And then I'm giving the random passport number. Now I want to create a function. Further write const. I'm giving here check-in. So basically when the passenger has already bought the flight and is then ready to check in. So to take the flight and then let's say there we need a flight number. So for that write here function, and in that function we need the flight number, then also passenger. Here this passenger which contains about the passenger itself the data. And now we can call the function like this, check in, and then give here flight that we have already have here. This is the flight. And then this Priya object. So now here this is our flight and then this is our passenger. Now let's say that number of the flight was changed, and so that can happen in the check-in function. Now let's change the flight number parameter, flight num, that is equal, for suppose I am giving, you should not change the parameters of the function, but this is just to make a point. So I'm giving here LH 999. Now we changed the flight number to LH 999. Now I need to change the passenger name also. So for that, passenger dot name, and that is equal. I want to give before the name is dot and then give plus and then passenger dot name. So these are some changes that the check-in function do. So before we check in, it will just check if the passport number is correct or not. So for that, let's write here if passenger dot passport that is strictly equal this number. So for that, write this number, then paste here. And so here if the number is correct passport number, So then alert check-in, else alert wrong passport. Now what I want to do is to log both the flights and also the Priya object to the console. After calling the check-in function, let's write console.log flight and then also console.log. We need to call the object also Priya. Now let's see the result. We have that here checked in. Check. We get that checked in. Checked in and now just click on OK. After clicking the OK, we get this flight number and also details of the person. You see that here the flight number is remains the same what we have given first, the flight number LH234. But now the details of the person, that is passenger details, that is changed to what we have given inside the function. So that is Miss Priya Sharma. That is changed this and then the passport also verified. So let's analyze this. Here the flight is a primitive type. That is just a string. We passed that value into a function down here. And then this flight number is basically a copy of that original value. So flight number contains a copy, not simply the original value of the flight variable. So this would be exactly the same as writing that here. Flight number that is equal flight. So this value to the flight is now the flight number. So let's place this in comments. And also here the flight number is a completely a different variable that we changed the value. It did not get reflected in the outside of the flight variable. So that is exactly what we see in the primitive versus reference type lecture. And now this Priya object that we passed into a check-in function, and in that function it is called passenger, and then we changed that passenger object here. We see this, and this Priya object was also affected by that change. When we pass a reference type to a function, that's what is copied is really a reference to the object in the memory heap. So let's see this again. And this is I'm giving the const flight number equal flight and also const passenger equal Priya. So this is what we are doing same. This is same as doing. Now when we try to copy an object like this, we really only copying the reference to the object in the memory heap, but they both print to the same object in memory. So exactly what is also happening here with the Priya object as we pass it into the check-in function where it's called passenger and we are manipulating the passenger object. It is exactly the same as manipulating the Priya object. So once again, because they are both the same object in the memory heap. So giving a summary that passing a reference to a function is really just the same as creating a copy like this outside of the function. So the value is simply copied and also on the other hand, when we pass an object to a function, it is really just like copying an object like this. So whatever we change in the copy will also change in the original. Now let's write another function. It's for example const. I'm giving here passport, new passport, and this is equal. I'm creating a function, and then here in this function, into this I'm giving person And then basically it will simply change that person's passport number. So for that I am giving person dot passport, that is equal, and let's simply create a random number here. So math dot random, that is, so this is basically between 1 and this number. And also here we can use math dot trunk also. So with this we can give a big number. Now let's call that function new passport, and here I am giving the object. Now let's say that I have booked a flight with my original passport number, that is this passport number, this one, that the check-in function will then compare my passport to, that's why it's hard coded right here. So I change my passport before I check in. Now let's here write check-in, check-in of flight. Now let's reload here. Let's see the result. Here we have checked in still. So this is coming from this function. And then we have the another one also. So let's give OK. And then we have that this is a wrong passport. It is because of that we have changed the value of passport. So here in this we have two functions that are manipulating the same object. So here we have passed the object to this new passport, and then this object now called this person, and as the function manipulates that person object, of course that will reflected in this priya object. So and then after doing that we are passing the priya object into the check-in function. So here the passport number is no longer the same as the original value. So that's why we are getting the wrong passport. So this was done, and there are two terms that are used all the time when dealing with functions, which is passing by value and passing by reference. And many experienced programmers that are new to JavaScript have so confusion between these terms and how to works in JavaScript. And I'm going to quickly address these. So JavaScript does not have passing by reference, only passing by value. There are languages like C++ where you can use pass a reference to any value instead of giving the value. This works even with the primitives. So you could pass a reference to the value of 5, and then the original value outside of the function would be changed. And this is called pass by reference. But once again, JavaScript does not have pass by reference. So many new beginners are having confusion in this when they come from other languages such as C++ like that. So this is all about the session. See you in the next one. Thank you.